Good evening and welcome to the Federal. The ISB's India Data Portal has been using nightlight data to study economic development. It maps its data with assembly constituencies and gives us granular reports on economic growth in each state. We have with us Professor Ashwini Chhatre, Chair, IRB, Executive Director, BIPP, Associate Professor, Economics and Public Policy at the India School of Business. Professor Chhatre will explain nightlight data to us and tell us how it can be used to predict economic outcomes and improve governance. Welcome, Professor. Can you give viewers a brief idea of how nightlight's data works?
Nightlights is exactly what the words mean. It is all the nightlights that we have on Earth that are captured by satellites once every night. And this data allows us to map where economic activity is happening. It doesn't capture any data that doesn't produce light. So it's largely restricted to urban areas and industrial activities, activities that require electricity and produce heat and light. But overall, in the economy, how things are moving, especially in terms of intensity of economic activity and spread of economic activity, these satellite images provide an excellent picture because at the top of the pyramid is the services and manufacturing. And it provides us with a very good proxy indicator for economic activity as to what is going on in the geography. So if you look at a whole state and just measure all the nightlight radiance that is coming in, and there is a specific unit to that, nanowatts per square meter, for example. This is how satellites measure and estimate data. We take that data at very high resolution, 1 square kilometer grid, and add it up for the whole state. And this is something that is being done around the world now for certainly more than 10 years. The sensors that are mounted on the satellites have also improved a lot so that we have greater confidence in what is being measured. And when we look at data year by year, we can see how economic activity is changing. In most cases, how economic activity is increasing because it is proportional to the increase in the total radiance. How economic activity is expanding because areas that did not have light now have light. And areas that had low light now have more light. It also gives us a very, very good and precise sense of how the pandemic has impacted economic activity. Because between 1919 and 1920, there is a huge drop in nightlights radiance. And there is also a significant decline in the spread of lights. Many areas that used to have lights in 1919 do not have light in 1920. Okay. And while we don't know the precise nature of economic activity that was happening and is no longer happening, we do know that the areas where the nightlight radiance intensity declined the most must have suffered the economic impact the highest. That is the beauty of nightlight data.
Okay. And how is it right now? Have you seen the latest data? Because what I saw was till 2020. What about 21 and right now when they're saying, there's economic green shoots and all that? Is it visible? Have you taken a look at the latest data?
Yes. And the green shoots are indeed visible. We are still processing this data. We felt that it was important and useful to release the data at least until 1920, which we have finished and we are confident about. To see the economic impact across space so that it's usually done at the district level or at the block level because those are the units of development and economic development. But we decided to aggregate the nightlights data to the assembly constituency level because in many ways and in important ways, the elected representatives are responsible to some measure for economic activity in the areas that they represent, the people that they represent. So by aggregating it to assembly constituencies and looking at how things have changed over time, both until 2019 and then the fall in 2020, we are actually able to provide very precise measurements of the difference in impact between different constituencies across the same state. Now, we are still not finished with the analysis of the 2021 data, and preliminary analysis suggests that yes, green shoots are showing up and economic activity is picking up, but it's not even as can be expected. For now, we just want to focus our attention on the spread or increase in economic activity between 2015 and 2019, and the impact of the pandemic between 19 and 20, so that we have a better sense of evaluating performance of governments and outcomes of governance.
And how closely does this correlate with other economic indicators, like say GDP? Have you tried correlating the two, or how does it work?
Yes, and not just me. This is something that is now being done by the World Bank and many other countries and researchers. Night lights is a very good indicator and proxy for GDP in advanced industrial economies.
Yeah.
Okay? Simply because total economic production is highly correlated with manufacturing and services, which are very well captured by night lights. Agriculture is not very well captured by night lights.
Yeah.
Informal economy is not well captured by night lights. So in the Indian context, night lights need to be taken with a little bit of caution. But the big advantage of night lights is that it's real time. We have data from satellites that went over India last week. Within a few days, we have that data because satellites are continuously beaming the data to ground stations, and that data is available. If we can use it appropriately without taking it at face value, it is an indicator. But GDP is also an indicator, and it's an imperfect indicator as well. The problem with GDP is that it is not available until sometimes 2 or even 3 years later, by which time it is too late to take corrective action. Sometimes, even in terms of recession, for example, we have to wait for data for 2 quarters before we know that there was a recession last year.
Okay. Yeah.
With night lights, we can get quick intelligence, even if it is imperfect. It is not precise, but it is an advanced and early warning system that tells us we need to do something, and we can prepare for it in real time.
Okay. And does the quality of the light matter? Is just something, supposing it's LED, does it show up brighter? Or if it's a very dim light, how does it actually make a difference there? Because not all lights are equal, right?
Not all lights are equal, and sometimes the radiance increases just because we changed fluorescent lamp with an LED light. It doesn't differentiate between where the light is coming from.
Okay.
But at sort of low Earth orbit, where the satellites are, total luminance, which is the radiance that is captured by the sensor, is a fairly accurate predictor independent of the source of light, because a lot of this light is coming from industrial establishments and urban centers.
Okay.
And that luminosity does not change without change in the underlying level of economic activity.
Okay, fine.
So
And
we can be fairly confident about the interpretations from night light data.
Okay, fine. And you say the satellite data is available everywhere. So can lay people who are interested in this also watch night lights data and make their own interpretations? Like people do for weather now, all sorts of, amateurs are trying weather prediction now. Would that work for night light predictions?
So there are 2 challenges there. One is, I don't think regular lay people like you and me can interpret weather data. It has to be translated for us. So what we consume is actually model outputs that are presented in a form that we have been trained to understand.
Interpret, okay.
Just to take a quick example, when I was small, and I'm sure you remember it, INSAT 1C, 1A, 1B went to space, and then at DD News, there used to be satellite pictures, which was mesmerizing but uninterpretable. Nobody knew what to do with it, but they were beautiful, right? And the temperatures I grew up in Delhi, there were two temperatures. One was Safdarjung Airport and one was Palam Airport. These were real temperature gauges where people used to measure and record temperatures. Now today Delhi has one temperature and it's all over Delhi. It's the average temperature of Delhi that is produced from a model. That whole process is uninterpretable for the layperson. It's the same with night lights.
Yes.
It has to be translated into a measure that people can make sense of. And we are trying to do that.
Great. And what about governments? How far can a government use nightlight data, for its policy decisions and economic schemes? And are governments taking it seriously right now?
I don't know of any government in India that is taking nightlight seriously.
Okay.
And I think it is time that they did. Because all the other sources of data, especially about economic activity, come with a significant lag. And when you find out that something is wrong, you find out whatever was wrong 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Nightlights data is a early warning system that then governments can target their investigations and data collection efforts to know more about the problems before they occur, rather than after they have already occurred. So instead of firefighting, there can be preemptive action to prevent a fall in economic activity. I believe that governments should be using nightlights data much more proactively for their own monitoring and evaluation. And it's a loss for all of us if they don't.
And does the fact that India is hugely an agrarian economy put us at a disadvantage where nightlights data is concerned?
Well, we can be smart about it. The intelligent thing to do is, there are large parts of Chhattisgarh which have no electricity. Night lights is not going to give us any insight on what is happening there. Or any early warning system is not going to be based on night lights for areas that don't have electricity or industrial activity. But for Punjab, for Goa is sort of a well-lit 70% urban industrial economy, Punjab, a lot of UP. So if you look at the nightlights map of India, and it's available, you search on Google, it's available. You will see large pockets where there is sufficient nightlights to serve as an advanced warning system. And there are large parts of India where it will not help. So we should be smart about where we should use nightlights and where it will not be used.
Okay, coming to Goa, I just had one doubt. The map showed that, economic activity has actually degrown before the pandemic itself in the coastal areas. I found it a little funny because Goa is big on beach tourism and all that. What might be a reason for that, Professor?
It's for the people of Goa to discuss and debate, particularly public intellectuals, because the satellite data does not lie. And the decline is very minimal. So it's not a steep decline.
Yeah, it's not a steep. But
and there are many other areas that have increased a lot. So there is a spatial geography of economic development where some areas are increasing and some areas are not increasing. And the precise drivers of change in economic activity must be analyzed at the local level, at the state level. But the data gives you a starting question. Why does it decline here and why does it increase there?
Okay, right. That's a nice. Okay. And what are the advancements that are happening right now as we speak in nightlights data? Can you just give us a rough idea of what's happening there?
So the biggest advancement that has happened is the quality of the sensor. So for a long time, we had a sensor that was not very good at capturing changes because it was very coarse. So now for the last few years, we have new sensors that are much more precise and they are more accurate in measuring change. So we can be more confident. And that is the direction in which everything is going. Our sensors are getting better, digital sensors in particular. Our thermometers are getting better. Our blood pressure machines are getting better at measurement. So are our satellite sensors. And that will allow us to even go into non-industrial areas. Right now, like I said, we really should not be using night lights data for non-urban, non-industrial areas. But as sensor technology is improving, we should now, in a couple of years, I believe, able to use night lights data even for places that do not have a lot of industrial activity, but do have economic activity that is non-industrial and non-urban.
Thank you so much, Professor Chhatre. That was a very interesting interview. We learned a lot. Thank you so much.